nice to be here, and thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've actually found it a bit of a challenge to sit down and write something to share with you guys for today. It's been 5 years since I first came to a drop-in meditation night up at Yoga Point. Trying to pick out just a few moments from that 5 years has been pretty tough, because there have been a lot of them, actually. A few people here started coming just around the same time as me. Hey, Richard. And I've been to your Mitra ceremonies, so it's nice that you're at mine. I was looking through my journals for inspiration, and the first date that I recorded having been to a drop-in meditation night was May 29, 2017. It's very significant. And I'd obviously, from that entry, already been to a couple of meditation nights because I recorded doing the Metta Bhavana not once, but twice. So I'm pretty certain that Ratnachuda taught the very first class I sat in on, and Gita was there on Monday nights, and I remember so clearly Sudika saying how we all have forces of darkness and light within us, and what we're doing with the Metta Bhavana is really just being on our own side. And that was a pretty big revelation that we could do that with meditation. And I did the pretty traditional way in. I went on a couple of retreats, I did a course, and then another one, and another one. And some of you remember the journey in the guide from the Brixton Pound Cafe. That was a good one. My friend remembers that. And I joined a study group, and I made some wonderful friends, many of whom were here, and laughed a lot, and learned more about the Dharma. You know, I felt better, really. I felt more compassionate, I felt kinder, I had a better relationship with my parents, to the people around me. I had a good job, and you know, things were overall, you know, quite good. And the whole time I'm kind of asking myself, is this me, you know? Is this my new identity? Like, am I a Buddhist, you know? And I think I approached it with a certain distance, in fact. Like, maybe a bit of skepticism, really, to be completely honest. And I wasn't even quite sure that I recognized myself in a way. Like, it was kind of another person doing all these things. But the more I learned, the more I meditated, I really started to feel that some of the conditions of my life were a bit misaligned. And what I was doing with my time and my efforts didn't feel all that valuable. I felt that in some ways that I was doing things the easy way, or kind of rearranging the furniture, as we sometimes say. I went on a week-long retreat at Dhanakosha, Amar Pushpa mentioned, where I really had to kind of confront this image that I had of myself as a sort of placid observer of my life. That actually I was holding a lot of fear and anger, and that was keeping me distanced from some harder choices, and also things that I had always wanted to do. And I was trying to imagine what it would mean to feel free of doubt and fear about myself, about other people in my life. So I made a lot of changes. I quit my job. I started a master's in landscape design, which is something I've always been really deeply interested in, and where I felt I could make a more direct impact. And it was tough. You heard about that, so I won't go into it. But it took me mostly away from the Brixton community. And without the anchor of regular practice, it was difficult to remember kind of the benefits of that practice. But sort of ironically, at the same time, I started calling myself a Buddhist to people that I met on the course. And I found that was a kind of a good way of communicating my values and building my relationship with this kind of new practice that I was in. You know, conditionality, everything rises on independence of conditions, interdependency, impermanence. Like, those are Buddhist principles, but they're also landscape principles, funny enough. So talking about Buddhism and mindfulness and compassion was a way of kind of bringing myself to my studies. And 2 years went by during a pandemic, so a lot was happening. And then it was over, and finishing my degree pretty much coincided with Brixton reopening after the pandemic. And I started coming in again and helping out on Monday nights. And Monday night kind of felt like home, you know. It felt like the obvious place to start. And it took a little while, a few months or so, to feel comfortable again, to feel like part of the group, to feel like my contribution was valuable. And then there was another Brixton retreat in January, where I was just reminded kind of just how powerful it is to be held by people that know you and see you without judgment and with complete compassion. In January, I went back up to Dharma for a beginner's retreat, and starting back at the beginning with the precepts and the 3 lakshanas, and that was really valuable because it kind of dawned on me that actually I do know this stuff. You know, this is my practice, and these are concepts that I have deep familiarity with, and it's kind of like, oh, this is my faith, really. And I really appreciated the investment that I'd made already with the study group and with all the teaching that I've had. So even when I wasn't in it, I was in it. I can see that now. And you know, in lots of ways, there's still a load of uncertainty. I'm trying to figure out what the next steps are, like how to make this into something. And you know, in some ways, that's even more difficult than the study was. You know, there's a lot of vulnerability there. But, you know, I see these as conditions that I'm working with, worldly winds, we talk about, and I feel strongly that there's something deeper at work in us and around us that's not dependent on status or achievement, and, you know, that's what I've always felt really grateful to in this group. You know, I see this community as a doorway to this sense of joy and peace and a place of deeper emotion and energy and mystery and connection, really. So yeah, that's the story. I just want to thank my friends for coming to learn a bit more about this part of my life. I hope you like the chanting. We'll see how that goes. I want to thank the amazing teachers that I've had over the years. I've learned so much from. Special thanks to Richard for being a good friend to me all this time, and really, like Richard, knows how to cultivate friendship, and I really appreciate that in you. And we've had lots of discussions about all this stuff. And of course, Amar Pushpa for supporting me the whole way through. And this community has been a source of joy and laughter and cake and tea and fellowship. And I'm very glad to have met you all 5 years ago. That's it.
Just going to ground myself a little bit. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of stuff going on internally. Yeah, I think there's emotion there as well, so maybe I'll touch on that at some point. Yeah, I think in the blurb that I sent to Ian, I describe myself as a commitment folk, and someone who's both resisted but also secretly wanted to belong, or a great sense of belonging in the world. And I think that describes me quite accurately. And I think I've always felt much more comfortable kind of on the outside of groups, on the periphery, being kind of non-committal. So if things don't quite work out, I can leave. Keeping my options open, that type of thing. And yeah, it definitely feels safer for me to do that. That's my place of safety, it's my place of comfort. But it's also quite a lonely place. I feel quite separate and apart. And yeah, so one of the ways this sort of tendency, this deeply ingrained tendency that I have has sort of played out in my life is that I've moved around a lot. I've lived in lots of different places. I grew up in Morpeth, which is near Newcastle. I've lived in Newcastle, I've lived in Liverpool, I've lived in Colchester, I've lived in Hastings, I've lived in Mexico, and I've lived in London. And in fact, after my hometown, Brixton is the place that I've lived the longest. I think I lived 14 years in London, I lived 13 years in Brixton. I moved to Crystal Palace last year. So yeah, it feels kind of fitting to do this in Brixton. And weirdly, my mum, she taught in London in the 1960s. She lived in Wandsworth, but she taught at a school on this very road. I think it's now nursery, the bottom end of this road, the Effra nursery. My mum used to teach at that school. So yeah, I would have said previously that was a coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences anymore. There's something weird going on there. So yeah, I sort of given this background as a sort of way of trying to explain that taking this step of becoming a Mitra feels quite significant for me, given this very strong tendency to not want to commit to anything. Just to kind of say, I'm choosing and I want to belong to this community. As a practicing Buddhist, in such a public way, it does feels quite quite significant, really. So yeah, just to sort of briefly talk about my journey within True Atma. So yeah, as mentioned, I said I first came here in 2017, and I kind of threw myself in. I went to courses, retreats. I joined a Mitras study group. And yeah, I think in hindsight I went faster than I was really comfortable with. I was, I guess I was trying to be a good Buddhist and trying to kind of fit in and doing what I imagined others were expecting me to do, rather than listening to what it was that I wanted to do. And so that didn't really work. I guess I was kind of overriding myself, and so I kind of left. It just felt too uncomfortable and too weird, so I kind of left and I went off. I was doing other things, as Mitras said, and then in 2019 I had this really emotionally turbulent year where I got in touch with some really deep emotion that lay dormant for a very long time, and it was a very strange year. I had some of the weirdest experiences that I don't have time to go into now, but at the end of that year, I just had this urge to go on retreat and to kind of reconnect with Buddhism. And so I just booked this retreat at Rivendell without knowing anyone on the retreat or who was leading the retreat. But this retreat had a massive impact on me. It was just a weekend retreat, but it was just so powerful. And I think that was partly because of where I was at. I was just really receptive and open to it. But also I just really resonated with the order members who were leading that retreat, who was Sangha Shri and Balaji. And I think there were two things about the way they led the retreat and taught the Dharma that was sort of liberating for someone like me. And the first of those was there was this kind of sense of radical permission giving to kind of listen to what it was that I needed. Kind of to tune into my own body, my intuition, and to kind of trust that I know kind of what I need, and to kind of try and connect with that inner knowing. And even if that meant not meditating or lying down instead of sitting up. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was this: it was like an explicit invitation to welcome all parts of myself in the space. So I could, not just the good bits of good Buddhist, but also the bit that doesn't want to be here, the bit that thinks this is a load of rubbish and would rather be somewhere else. And so, not having to exclude those parts. And I think that for me was really important because because I had this. My glasses are broken. I had this. This tendency to kind of try and get rid of those parts, and that just created a lot of anxiety because I was constantly trying to kind of stay away. So since that time, I've been sort of gradually re-engaging with Buddhism, initially with mostly with Singha and Balajit, but then past couple of years with more and more with Brixton. And last year Effra Parade invited me to stay in the men's community because I was moving house and I didn't have somewhere to live, so I moved in there. And I was quite surprised actually because I hadn't really been had much contact with Brixton, and I thought it was really generous of Effra Parade to extend the offer, and I loved it. I really loved living there. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed being in the community and just feeling really welcome by Mitras and the other guys who live there. And so yeah, since then I've joined a study group. I'm kind of easing my way back in. I'm trying to kind of do it in a way that feels right for me, which is still difficult. I think saying no for me is still the hardest thing for me to do. But it definitely feels different this time. It feels that my engagement is more genuine. And I've noticed this growing emotional connection to Buddhism, like the puja, the mantra, the imagery. It's having I can kind of feel it more. It feels less alien than it used to. And yeah, I guess I'm starting to see the beauty as well and hear the beauty in the Buddhist imagery. And yeah, Buddhism is starting to sort of seem to me like this treasure trove. It's just like a vast treasure trove. Like, wow, this is just amazing. And also confidence. I feel, yeah, it's like it works. It really does work, and I can feel like this capacity to kind of be with my experience, kind of growing, even when there's a lot going on. There's a lot of activation going on, which with me is quite regular, and less prone to dissociating. So yeah, and yeah, I just feel like I'm sort of in a phase now where I'm deliberately trying to reorient my life in a kind of more heartfelt, authentic direction. Currently I'm still working at HMRC, which may not sound like most heartfelt occupation, but I'm only working there part-time. and I've been studying counselling. I've just finished my first year of counselling qualification. 2 years to go, and I just love it. And it feels like, wow, this feels like it could be a vocation for me. And yeah, I guess I want to develop more creative sides, which I feel I've kind of neglected. I sort of try to play the piano, writing. Yeah, just lots of stuff that just suddenly seems, oh, maybe I could do this stuff. Maybe this is possible. And yeah, Buddhism seems really key to kind of living that more authentic life, really. So yeah, thank you.